Chapter 1. I Had No Answers. Joy in the Sorrow of Pastoring a Suffering Church. Matt Chandler. I don't think I'll ever forget the sights, sounds, and smells in that hospital room. The smell of latex, tiles, and cleaning supplies filled the air, while a mother, a father, and 4 grandparents grappled with the sorrow that comes when a baby is born with challenges that will keep him or her from living a normal life. There would be no baseball games or soccer tryouts. There would be no Friday night lights, that's Texas dialect for high school football. There would be no promise of a future. It was the first time I ever saw an elderly man sob, and I felt completely discombobulated. The tiny baby boy had tubes and wires everywhere and laid in what looked to be a plexiglass coffin. I was in my first year at the village church in Dallas-Fort Worth, a church of a few hundred members at that time. I was 28 years old with little pastoral experience and no seminary degree, and I was confused. How can God be glorified in a deadly birth defect in an infant? What is going on here? Between the sobs in the room and my head spinning with questions, I felt naked. I had no answers, and my heart was broken. I couldn't stop thinking about my own 3-month-old daughter at home. What made everything worse was that I felt like I was supposed to be able to minister to my flock with some kind of confidence, and I couldn't. A few weeks later, my phone rang around 8:30 a.m. I answered and heard a frantic voice on the line saying something I couldn't quite make out, except for the words, accident, fishing, and dead. A young couple from the church had gone to the Pacific Northwest to see some extended family and old friends and, most importantly, to introduce them to their newborn son. The husband and new daddy was a true outdoorsman. He had hiked multiple mountains in the United States and was an avid camper, hunter, and fisherman. Early that morning in Oregon, he woke up and kissed his bride's forehead before quietly standing over his newborn son sleeping in the pack-and-play. Maybe he just stared at him, like new fathers tend to do. Having a son myself, I wonder if he was imagining the days when his boy would be getting up with him to hit the lake and see what good fortune might be waiting for them there. All we know about the accident is that the boat he and a couple of his friends were in capsized, and he drowned. A young man who hiked mountains, lived an active life, and was a great swimmer, died that day. I still think about him. I even have a photo of him on the top of some mountain summit looking down on the valleys below. He loved Jesus, his wife, and his son. He was full of life, courage, and grit. A hard worker who would do anything for anyone in need. Why him? There are plenty of lazy, abusive, narcissistic men who neglect or hurt their families. Why not take them? I could keep telling stories of the heartbreak and loss that seemed to mark my early years at the village, but these 2 experiences highlight what is normative for everyone everywhere: the reality of a fallen world. I found myself longing to do the funeral of an 80-year-old grandparent who loved Jesus and faithfully served him until their dying breath, leaving a legacy of faith in their wake. But that wasn't my experience. Suffering heroes. Not long after that young husband's funeral, I decided that I was going to do a deep dive on suffering, so that I might better equip the men and women God had entrusted me to lead in how to think about suffering, and God's character and purposes in it, and, most of all, in how to face suffering when it came flooding into their lives. And notice that I say when and not if, because all of us will suffer at some point. It's just a matter of when. I wanted to start with a biblical theology of suffering, leading me to dig into the Bible in search of how to make sense of the brokenness that seemed to be everywhere. As I started to study, I realized that I had read a lot of my Bible without really paying attention to what I was reading. Suffering in all forms was woven throughout the Scriptures, and not just in the book of Job. On almost every page there was disappointment, depression, doubt, sickness, and death.